Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-Affleck.
And it's time for...
Hello, Governor, it's our 4th season, UnSpun!
That was for Amanda.
I just offended everybody from England and Amanda. So there you go, the world's worst, my Dick Van Dyke as an Englishman accent. Hope you enjoyed that, everybody.
Season 4?
Season 4 of UnSpun. Can you believe it? This time has flown by.
It has. Seriously. And I have to tell you, honestly, George, taking a couple of weeks off of the podcast, I feel I have a lot of stuff I need to get out.
You're pent up anger and rage.
I do. I have my spin that needs to be unspun. But let's start with your experience in the UK. I think I'm so curious. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall all the way flying over and getting there and being there. And was it a different world? It seemed like a different world.
Yeah, well, there's the process of flying, which is and the multitude of tests. So I went. Amanda had gone 2 weeks earlier, and so Quinn and I went by ourselves. Once we got there, it was strange because they had obviously the variant was running rampant there, about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of us. London was had like 80% of people in London or something were catching it. Were exposed to it or something like that. It was crazy. It's kind of like where we're at now. But, there was a decision by the Prime Minister, and this is pre-Christmas, that he wasn't going to do any kind of lockdown. And this is England specifically, not Scotland and Ireland, because they decided to go in Wales. All three of those countries decided to go into more closer to what we have here. Whereas Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who got in a lot of trouble last year, when literally the day before Christmas, he said, "Oh, we're locked down." Everybody's like, "What?" So he was very apprehensive about that. And what he did, though, is announced absolutely hardcore push on getting the third dose done. Anybody who wants a third dose, it's available now. Go, 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 fast as you can. Because, of course, most of the UK were double AstraZeneca. And so they were early on getting those, and the 6 months long past. So he had enough, Pfizer and Moderna to get everybody their third dose. And so there was no age restrictions, 18 and above, obviously. And that was the key. And I think that really, really was his focus. He said, if you want to live, and if you want to have, it's clear that getting a third dose is the priority. But what was also interesting was the news. COVID didn't lead the newscast. The kind of things that we see here with counting and all this different stuff just wasn't happening in England. And it was a low priority for a thing that people didn't even want to talk about it. And just shopping. People don't social distance. There's no plexiglass at restaurants or bars. All the bars were open. The pubs were open. There's no restrictions on seating capacity. It was just normal, except the fact that we were aware and were clear that this variant was running wild and that we could catch it. So for us specifically, we were very tight with our network. It was family only, and if there was a dinner party, they had the fast tests, so they can quickly test. Everybody has a whole bunch of them at home, and if they're going to go for a dinner party or whatever, they'll do their test and go to the party.
Is that a nasal swab or a throat swab? Or
the nasal. Yeah. I've done about 10 of those in the last month. So you kind of they're living with it, and their expectation is they're going to catch it. But it's just, a matter of trying to avoid it as long as possible.
What are the hospitals like?
Your life.
What are the hospitals like?
There's no stories that say that they're overrun. We're seeing the data now.
That's
here.
Good news.
We're just seeing, we're seeing it happen here now, which was, again, about 3 weeks ago. So when I got there, we're where we are now. They weren't seeing the numbers. They saw that the case, that they were at 25% in the hospitals of what they were a year ago at the peak. So the numbers were showing that there was nothing to be concerned about, and even just as of, I think, 2 days ago, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he lifted all the restrictions on travel on the testing. So They're back to what they were a month and a half ago. They just kind of go,
I do want to point out, just so we're clear, if anybody's tuned in and saying, "What do you mean George went away over Christmas? We were told not to go anywhere." You actually left before we were told not to go anywhere. So I just want to be 100% clear with people that want to just come at you, George, because sometimes they just do. I'm going to talk about what was happening here while you were gone, as we heard about, just as you were leaving, Omicron was a thing. It was being reported on widely, which I think is something that we can all agree now for our news cycle. When something becomes a story as quickly as a variant like Delta did, like Omicron did, that we're paying attention to it for a reason. Like scientists somewhere are going like, this is a problem, while other people are like, what about the variant in France? Well, if we're not hearing about the variant in France in a really urgent way from the World Health Organization and our public health officials, then let's just leave that there. Variants are going to happen. This is, like you said, this is what we're going to live with now. But so interesting to watch here, the level of stress increase in the community. It's been like, people talking about testing centers, and in the most recent, I think it was yesterday, that John Horgan had tweeted out, that the Premier tweeted out about altercations at testing centers, that healthcare workers were being abused by public who are demanding that they get, fill in the blank, whether it's a PCR test or a rapid test or whatever it is. But I remember, George, really vividly, and we were not allowed, when I got my first and second dose and then my booster, because of being an essential for Dad, all of those things happened a little before the big push, when it became like, okay, everybody's getting boosted, everybody's getting their vaccine, here's what it looks like. So I went through one of the drive-through clinics. It was my second dose, because my first one was actually at my dad's long-term care home. The second dose, it was like no social media, and then there was a sign that said, any abusive behavior of any kind will be punishable by law. And I thought to myself, who would abuse somebody here, right? And a year later, now we see, like, this is textbook human atrocity. Like, the people, check yourselves.
Yeah. I think, and you see this, and Twitter's not always the greatest gauge of what's going on, but I've seen people now who are fairly, strict about they were serious about, dealing with COVID, and they were following the rules. A lot of those people now are going, okay, you know what, mental health versus COVID, let's start thinking about this. And I think you kind of heard Dr. Bonnie Henry kind of allude to this, I think, in her latest press conferences, that schools, for example, that they're not going to shut those down. I think that we have to look at countries like England and even the States, although our vaccination levels are so much higher than England and so much higher than the United States, and yet we're creating more strict rules here than those two places. And I find that interesting. And you don't hear the stories about mental health issues in England. At least I didn't hear any, certainly in the news. It wasn't a discussion. Again, it's not a priority. It's not something they're obsessing about like they are here. And I think they're just kind of getting on with their lives. There's also the issue of the economy, because Europe is quite different, where they have followed more strict rules than England. There's stories about, speculation or assessments about the future of the economy and how England, the UK, is going to come out of this quicker and stronger than the rest of Europe because of their willingness to live with this disease, live with this problem, and move on and get going. And so it's scary, though, I know, for a lot of people. And I think this variant is showing us that, hopefully this is the last iteration, or the next iteration will be even less and less. And so eventually it's just a cold or a flu, and we just have to kind of deal with it.
Something we deal.
We can't shut our economy down again. We can't afford it.
So there are a couple of things I want to talk to that you just brought up. First, on the school front, because I had the opportunity, I was filling in for Mike Smith this week, actually last couple of weeks, on CKNW, had the opportunity to speak with Terry Mooring, the BCTF president, about schools, and in particular. And it was interesting, she did mention how it took 6 months of really demanding that masks be mandatory in schools. And now we can't imagine in this time of Omicron not having masks. So it was like, we've all learned a great deal. I think that's the unspun piece of what you reference in the UK. It does resonate here when we start to really address what we have learned, because the people that are always going to be pissed off, you told me 2 doses, now it's 3, when is it going to be 5? And then it's like, okay,
we don't know.
Science, guys.
Yeah,
science.
We don't know. We're learning as we go. Yeah.
Right. And we're lucky we have science. And then to the other end of the extreme, and when you mentioned, I actually cringed a little bit when you said there's no plexiglass, pubs are open, and da-da-da. I mentioned on radio weeks ago, it would have been 2 weeks ago, I mentioned on radio when speaking with Ian Tostenson about how if your house is teeny tiny and you're going to have people over for Christmas dinner, maybe you take that table of 6 to a restaurant instead of having it in your small apartment. And oh my
really?
goodness,
How dare you tell people to go out in public?
COVID is airborne. I'm like, yes, it is. But you're dangerous. I'm like, okay. And it's taken me to now to come up with the analogy that will calm their level of angst with somebody else's perspective, because somebody else's perspective, like yours and mine, has been very different. You have been going
Mm-hmm.
out in ways that I have not, because I had to be going into a long-term care home. Your
Yeah.
idea of risk was different than mine. I don't judge you for that. I
Mm-hmm.
actually respect you for that. And that's what we should be doing here. But we're also vaccinated and boosted and taking the measures and wearing our masks and washing our
Yes.
hands and distancing. So to the COVID is airborne mob that came at me, like, was shocking. I now say to them, if your risk assessment of dining in at a restaurant is equivalent to my risk assessment of jumping out of an airplane, don't dine in. I'm not going to jump out of an airplane. I find that too risky for me. I have
Yeah.
lots of people who want to do it daily. And I'm like, you go, you do you,
Mm-hmm.
boo. I'm not going to jump out of a plane. I think it's too risky. But for me to feel comfortable going to Romer's and having a burger and feeling comfortable within the plexiglass or whatever, the
Mm-hmm.
ventilation, don't call me dangerous for doing that if we are addressing all the layers of protection. I think it's the noise around this place we're in on COVID-19 in this pandemic that everybody, and this is the punctuation, the mental health piece and the economy piece are very, very real now.
Mm-hmm.
So if Omicron is that next variant that goes, because as variants mutate, what we're learning is they get a little weaker and weaker, hopefully, that's what science says. But typically in a
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, they burn out within 3 or 4 years because they mutate in a way like this. But had we not had vaccines, the death toll would have been exponentially
Oh my God.
higher. I mean,
20 million? Where would we be at? I mean, it'd be crazy. It'd be
it
crazy.
would be crazy. So, okay, so can we go to the next major extreme weather event to talk
I
about?
know.
Like, welcome back to the snow,
I know.
dude.
I was in England. It was raining and quite warm, actually, almost like summer here. And coming back here with the snow, and I'm obviously at home today in my box, my little gray box here, wearing my headset.
You look like
Looking
evil
outside.
John Oliver because you don't have the white background. You have like the gray, dark brown, like evil John
That's
Oliver.
right.
Yeah.
But I'm looking out the window to the big snow out there.
Yeah.
It's amazing and cool, but it's also one more thing that's like I can't get to the office. What's the point? And all my staff are working from home because of COVID and now because of snow. It's like I mean, this extreme weather. What a year! What a year it's been for BC. Like
Yeah.
insane. We've had everything. Like seriously,
Everything.
it's
And
crazy.
again, I've got to give a shout out to the road crews on this most recent
Mm-hmm.
dump of snow. Like, the expectation was it was going to be chaos on the roads when this next layer of snow came and hit. And I mean, I woke up to videos of Port Coquitlam. No, Port
Yeah,
Coquitlam.
Brad West. Yeah, Poco. Yeah.
Brad West. Yeah, Poco. Brad West. Sorry, I
Mm-hmm.
had my Richard Stewarts and my Brad Wests mixed up.
Yeah.
Poco and
Two
Coquitlam,
good
because
mayors.
those two mayors, two really good mayors. Like one that
Mm-hmm.
had to go on Twitter and say, "Hey, if you think that I have city staff actually snow blowing the front walk, it's actually me. I'm just still wearing my reflective vest." I thought that
Right.
Richard Stewart tweet was magnificent.
Yeah,
And
he's
then
out
you got
there clearing his neighbors
Brad
with his
West
own snowplow, out there clearing his neighbors' sidewalks, and
driveway.
he
Yeah,
forgot to
and
take his
sideway.
gear off or whatever.
But he
Yeah,
had gear on. Imagine a
I know.
mayor that's out actually helping people. What a concept.
Yes, what a
Brad
concept.
West also the ride
Uh,
along.
yeah, I mean, that, and obviously these are, when we talk about spin, I mean, who knows? Could they be spinning it? Is this Brad West and they're good mayors, but they also are good at communicators.
Yeah.
And so obviously Brad's getting in that truck early at 4 a.m. to cruise around and videos it himself. He's not actually out there shoveling snow. He probably is, I'm sure, but it's a it's meant to be a way for everybody to understand. I hear you. I'm here for you.
Yeah, he's not sitting back giving it one of these. Yeah, no, they're working
yeah,
hard. They're working hard. Like,
yeah. Whereas Vancouver, where's our man? Hello.
Where is he?
I don't know. He was there. He announced something on Twitter about some new $200,000 staff position. The minister, what is it? The director of conflict of interest or something. What is that? I don't know what it was. The director of ethics. I think it was ethics, isn't it? I find that ironic. And anyways, yeah, he's completely disappeared as per usual. I mean, Gregor did that too during snowstorms. He was always away.
But I'm over blaming Gregor for the Gregor, because he got voted out because people were so frustrated by it. Like, this is,
well, he didn't run again,
he did, but then ultimately it was vote out vision was what changed things up. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what it felt like. That's why we've got such a mishmash of people. Is like anything but all one was what everybody
went. It's going to get mishier and mashier this year. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, where is he? And this is like, and that's what I don't get. This mayor. It's perceived as arrogance, of course, when you don't do things like what you see Richard Stewart and Brad West do. Grassroots marketing communications like what they're doing is what keeps people happy about your mayor. It's civic politics is grassroots at its most finest. And if you don't resonate that, you seem like you're more of a, top down, like you're sitting in your little
figurehead.
Yeah, then that doesn't fly in cities. It doesn't, not in Canada. Maybe in the United States, but certainly here it doesn't. They want to see you in the neighborhoods. They want to see you on the streets. They want to talk to you. And the only time the mayor has been talked to in this city, and he calls the cops on somebody.
While you were gone,
his voters, he calls the cops on them.
While you were gone,
yes,
the single room occupancy hotels, the SROs, that in that bitter Arctic polar vortex that we had, another extreme weather event that was the week between Boxing Day and New Year's
15,
Day.
Yeah.
It was minus 15 for 6 straight days in a city that's not built for that at all. And the SROs had no heat. So we ended up, John Jang and I I was filling in on the Jazz Johal show, and John Jang, actually, we got a tip, and I said, I'm in the middle of the show, and I'm like, John, can you interview this guy? Because this is what I'm hearing, and blah, blah, blah. And he did. And there's this resident who is being told by the people who run the SRO, you're not to speak with the media, you're not to reach out to the city, you're not to, or you might lose your space. Can you imagine being marginalized to that degree? You're spending $700 of your next to nothing that you get to live on, and you have no heat. It's minus 15. So we break that story. It becomes obviously a bigger story as more than one SRO has the same problem. We reach out to the mayor, not available.
What, the 43 communication staff couldn't book him in?
He was monitoring the situation from afar. Oh, here we go. I got you. It was frustrating, George. I'm telling you. Like, at least come on and just appear to care that this is happening. Like, it really felt, I really, in my head, sorry, that might be a little callous, but I was so disappointed in the leadership in this city, in this particular city. And then we can talk about Surrey. I mean, well, I'd be frustrated to live in Surrey right now too. It's just, shutting out your constituents is not the way to lead in a municipality. Like, it just isn't.
It's interesting though in Surrey, and I agree with you with the mayor of Vancouver, and I still think he can win again because of the split on the right, and he has right now no competition on the left for the position. He's being endorsed by some significant groups with clout on the left, so he's putting a party together. So I still think he's likely to win. But in Surrey, and I was saying this before Christmas on our last thing, I talked about Doug McCallum in Surrey, the mayor. And I thought, who's his opposition? They're invisible. There is nobody. But in the last couple of days, there's been some names thrown about, some South Asian leaders, some MPs, MLAs that are interesting. And I think if one or two, if they could make a play for it, and I think could possibly win against Doug McCallum. But it has to be somebody of stature, well known in the community, and with good credentials that in order to beat him. That's not easy to find in politics. Partly because
Can we
people don't
just
want, they
reiterate?
don't like to run if they're not in office, and if they're already in office, they're kind of like, I don't want to leave this job and do that.
Right. Not enough money in politics for
Yeah,
good people to leave and get into
yeah.
it. That's what they say. But we need to reiterate, it's your birthday, October 15th, 2022. That's the municipal election. It's George's birthday.
It's my birthday.
Plan your gifts, people. Plan your gifts for George. But October
Yes,
15th, 2022, and there's just the one thing I want to reiterate every time we talk about municipal elections on Unspun, you do not have to check every box.
that's right.
Only vote what you know.
That's
Vote
right.
what you know.
I can explain that one more time. I mean, it's not, it's, called weighting your vote, basically. And so you have 10 choices for council, for example, in Vancouver, this is. And although this works in any community, there's going to be probably 75 people on the ballot for council, if not more. Probably 15 for mayor, if not more. It's crazy. And, that's why party politics can be effective, because you then just vote party slate. But if you don't feel you want to just vote for the best people, then just vote for the best people. Whether that's 5 best people or 6, or the only ones you manage to research, don't feel
Or
stressed that
just
you
the
have
mayor.
yeah, you don't just, it's, well, you want to give some votes to some people to weight them. It's just because it's hard to get
For
10
sure.
people that you think are good if they're all independents, but do 10 if you think you found 10 that are exceptional. Because what will happen,
Right.
I think the voters, there's an identity to people who do their own research, and you could end up with a really strong council if everybody chose only the strongest candidates that they believe are the strongest candidates. It's innate that voters know who the right people are. The problem with the structure that we currently have is that you feel obligated to give. Oh, okay, I'll do 4 more. I don't know who these people are. I heard a rumor that this person was
Yeah.
good, or I like
I
their
read their
last name,
bio.
or yeah,
I read their bio.
the
Don't
well-written
read
bio.
their bio.
Yes.
Do not read their bio and believe them, because they
Google
will
them, call them.
absolutely do the opposite.
I
It
can
is
tell you
like,
that if a candidate's running and they don't have time to meet you in the next election, then they don't deserve your vote. There is enough time, I believe, at least in some kind of setting, that there are public functions. If you can't find the candidates and the ones you think are interesting and talk to them, then they're not doing their job and when they're running. So it's not that complicated for them. So it's really important for people to understand that. Don't feel stressed about this, but if you think there are 10 great people or a good mayor, vote for them.
totally. No,
But
if you've done your homework and you're civic minded and you identify the people that you want to be leaders, absolutely vote
Mhm.
for them. I just remember in the last municipal election that I was overwhelmed by the ballot. I was overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
And I consider myself to be pretty savvy on such things. And I still was like, I have no idea who these park board people are. I do
Mhm.
now.
You know who you're not going to
Just
vote
saying.
for. That's
I
for sure.
definitely know who I'm not going to vote for. And speaking of parks, you saw that dude chilling park sign's been stolen again, and now there's a crocheted one that's
Oh
been put up
yeah,
there.
that's pretty funny.
Oh
That's
yeah,
pretty funny.
yeah.
I
There's
mean,
that
that
one.
sign gets stolen every 3 months. So,
Yeah,
but
it's fun and whimsical and
fun,
whatever. There's whimsy.
signage
Can we
though.
talk about my column now?
Yes, I mean, we should have acknowledged today's January 6th, and in the States,
Oh yes,
we're
we should.
recording what's going on. The 1 year anniversary of what happened in the Capitol there. Just, I mean, I don't know. We don't really have to get into it, but it's like, democracy and all those questions and spin. This is the ultimate in confusing spin, and
Yeah,
how you can change a story, and in fact lie and manage to pull the
rally a
wool, as it
base.
were, when to refer back to
Yeah,
your signage story, to pull the wool over people's
pull
eyes.
the wool
It's
over.
just, yeah,
Can I just
it's
say on
brutal.
the January 6th thing, I watched Biden's address of the nation in the morning of, and I think that was one of his strongest ever speeches when it came to just laying it down. He didn't look like a man that was trying to hold on to or grab power. He looked like a man who was like, listen, if we don't fix this, if we don't learn from this, it can forever damage democracy in the United States. And nobody really wants that, you'd think. So,
But I don't see it up there. I don't know. I
I don't
think
know.
that they're with the whole division in that country right now, and they're going to have to start getting really tough. I mean, if you watch Bill Maher and you listen to him, Democrats
Yeah.
have to start playing the same game in a lot of ways as the Republicans are doing. Trump's
That
coming
January
back.
6th committee, the January 6th committee, and actually the Southern District of New York subpoenaing Ivanka and Donald Trump Jr. and Donald Trump, to look into their business dealings might actually be,
they won't show up.
I spoke with Reggie. They won't show up, but that will might impact his ability to run again.
Let's hope so.
Is what the Southern District of New York, that's what Reggie Cicchini was telling me this morning when I interviewed him from Washington, D.C. And that was in my mind. I'm like, okay, these are two very separate things. The January 6th committee is one thing, and then the SDNY is another. And we need to just, that might be stuck in court for a long time, but it's more urgent than that with the midterm elections coming up. And there's a lot to talk about with the US.
And I just think that never underestimate Donald Trump's ability to get away with whatever. Think of the things he's done.
Clearly,
the whole, that whole issue of the grabbing the whatever, and how he got, how did the politician get away with that line, and won the election? It's to me, and it's amazing, like crazy. Anyways,
it's crazy.
So but your column this week I thought was very interesting and very controversial. Going back to what you were saying about the dude chilling park, and now we have a signage in front of the. We did have. Well,
do you like the barge? Do you like the barge?
I think it was funny, and it's a little event and it's crazy, but get it out of there. It's enough. You walk down there, it's an eyesore. If you live across the street from there, it's dominating it dominates the beach. It's a beautiful walk along there, and now you're looking at this rusted out. It's an ugly boat, and get it out of there. What's the wait? Like, what? They literally can't get it out of there. Are you kidding me? I mean, come on. I saw somebody on. I think it was on TikTok, an American living up here, and she said that she talked about the barge. She said, if this was America, we would have pulled, heaven and earth, pulled that thing out of there. We would have helicopters. The army would have come in. We would have got that thing out of there.
5 minutes, it would have been gone. But here's, and I there's whimsy for me. I'm glad that I'm not alone in my distaste for it. It's like I start my column by saying I don't like it, and I hope I'm okay if you like it. I hope you're okay that I don't like it. Like, let's do that. But what really struck me was the Barge Chillin' Beach sign that went up that was then tagged with the First Nations word for that space and that place. Right. And I think that there's a big discussion to be had about how much red tape there is surrounding signage when it's not what the people who make the signs or decisions about the signs don't find to be a priority. Like things that people, where there's a will, there's a way. And when being tone deaf to that tag, I'm not a big fan of graffiti. We talk about it all the time, but that tag spoke volumes to me. And I live in Kitsilano on streets all the way along, running parallel to the numeric streets in Kitsilano are the names of oppressors from a colonist time of like murderers for First Nations and Indigenous peoples. Like if you lived on a street that was named after someone who murdered someone in your family, how uncomfortable might you be? Like, I think, do we have to apply it to ourselves? It's like, that's
what I think sad. Is interesting. What I think is interesting from your column is, and we talk about spin in the show, like how I can imagine the communications people at the outset when they did that, they thought, oh, it's fun, and then you got a lot of positive, and the people were like, oh, this is so funny, so fun, and then suddenly that graffiti happened, and then your column, and then people going, oh yeah. And now the columns people are going, oh God, this is spun a bit the way we didn't expect it to spin.
So
we
fix
thought we were just having fun. I mean, there's not the issue of how fast they got something done, which makes you frustrated if you see the bureaucracy of Park Board and City, but the fact that they didn't think.
And that's from an entitled white girl. That's an entitled white girl. Yeah. I'm not even speaking. I'm speaking like, wow, I can only imagine how mad somebody.
If you didn't think it through, and it just shows you have to be thoughtful. Bureaucracy and process, they exist for a reason. While they're frustrating, you have to be cautious sometimes about these things. And it was funny, but now that it seems to be a permanent fixture, it's not cool. That's not how it works. The joke's done. Take the sign down. Move the barge. Let's
sell
get
the
on
sign
with it.
For charity. Sell the sign for charity. Move the barge.
And send it to the Vancouver Museum for a little historical history for what happened in 2021, amongst other things, which were endless.
Endless profits. Comment at will at George _Affleck at George_Affleck on Twitter. I'm at Jody Vance. Of course, you're gonna tune in on the Fin or on the Orca and sign up for the Fin when you go to the orca.ca, depending on whether you're listening or watching, what have you. But go to the orca.ca, read the column there about the barge, and comment accordingly. And we'll see you again next week as we continue through season 4.
Season 4. Come at you.
Bye.
Bye.